Hello, my name is Janne Kauhanen. I'm the host and sauna majori of Cybersecurity Sauna. Today's episode was recorded live on site at our Cybersecurity Sauna booth at the Sphere 22 security event in Helsinki. We had an opportunity to talk to some of the guests and speakers at the event. I'm joined by Christine Bejerasco, the CTO of WithSecure. You've been at the Sphere 22 event talking about ransomware, so maybe that's what I want to find out. The development of ransomware families over your career, that's been your topic, hasn't it?
Yes, well, not really over my career, but over the years,
right.
For instance, in the past decade and a bit.
So what's some of the exciting things for you?
Well, I have realized, and what we have seen is just during this time, ransomware has become an industry. So within the past 8 years, we have seen that ransomware threat actors have had a lot of learnings in who are the targets that would give them the most money. So for instance, 4 years into the game, starting around 2014, they have started to realize that targeting individuals don't really get them as much money as opposed to targeting organizations. So we barely see any ransomware threat actors now opportunistically targeting individuals. They're targeting organizations, getting profiles of them in advance before they even deploy their ransomware.
Are all organizations equal to them, or are they doing like math, like an analysis, like these kinds of companies are more likely to pay than the others? Do we know?
I mean, of course, this is a challenge to validate because we have not really interviewed them. Yeah. But what we have seen so far is that since there are other threat actors, that what they are doing, like Emotet, are just infecting organizations and opening it up more like you have a backdoor, so to speak. Before ransomware threat actors actually come in, they partner with these threat actors and install the ransomware. So there are different organizational profiles in the dark web that they can purchase from those other threat actors.
Right.
So they are already making a choice on who to infect at the beginning.
So it's not opportunistic, like, we'll just get anyone. It's like, this is the company we want.
Yes. Because, it makes sense as well, because these ransomware threat actors, when they deploy the ransomware, it's not automated nowadays. So, for instance, the Nephilim ransomware threat actor, they use Cobalt Strike. They use Mimikatz, for instance. And so there's a lot of manual work, like human on the keyboard, when they're infiltrating through the organization before deploying the ransomware. So if you're opportunistic and spend a lot of time on that, it may not be very cost effective.
Okay, so there's this whole industry behind that. We're talking about access brokers and then this. Yes. Can you tell me a little bit about that industry?
Well, it's actually interesting, especially nowadays, like 2021, we have a ransomware shirt out there. And if you compare the volume of new families introduced in 2021, they are significantly lesser than years before. But if you look out there, ransomware is very prevalent. Like, for instance, Costa Rica nowadays having ransomware problems. So it's on the level
whole
of
country. Yeah.
Exactly. It's on the level of countries having ransomware problems. So the problem is there's lesser threat actors. So what's happening behind the scenes is that firstly, the access brokers, for instance, they are now separate from ransomware, as you already mentioned. Secondly, what I mentioned about the very manual nature. So it means that not everyone is doing it. Only those that they believe they can make things happen. And then the third thing is this ransomware as a service concept where the ransomware threat actors are now more focused on just building the actual ransomware code itself. And I was likening this to the Uber, for instance, model that if I'm Uber...
They're the platform.
Yes, they are the platform. And there are other threat actors who purchase this ransomware code, and then they are the ones distributing those.
So how are we fighting back to this phenomenon?
In addition to the Project DeLorean over there, which is kind of like a ransomware reverter that we are adding into our EPP product, we have quite good detections when it comes to detection and response on how ransomware gets into the networks, what infiltration happens. If people would visit, for example, the MDR booth with Sami Ruohonen, as well as the booth that Broderick and Pavel have with the EPP, a lot of those capabilities that we have are related to protecting against ransomware threat actors as well.
So can you sort of, once one machine gets infected in a company, can you sort of catch it before it goes everywhere?
You can. Like, let's say our endpoint protection. It has the capability, let's say this DeepGuard engine, it has capability that based on its behavior, it will block it. But let's say it makes it through that. So the detection and response engine also have rules that will identify that, okay, files are now starting to get encrypted. And if you have the MDR service as well on top of that, then they can immediately respond and then address the problem.
Is that a reliable way? Because one of the early sort of ransomware mitigation tools was just looking at the entropy in the system. But the problem is that you can have an increase in entropy, for example, when you're packaging files.
You can.
Yeah. So.
Well, I don't want to steal the thunder of the Project DeLorean people, but what they're trying to do as well is if ransomware is in your system trying to change files, we can observe that for, let's say, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And they can observe it very surgically, that even in the next 15 minutes, if you're creating a Word document file, that will not be part of what the ransomware process has done. And then after 15 minutes, if we have a detection and say, okay, that was actually ransomware changing things, we roll that back, like only those changes that ransomware has done. So the hope is that if this goes like to production to all of our clients, because it's only partially in production now, then if it goes out there, then everyone would be none the wiser. They're doing something, ransomware may be out reverting it, and then the work continues.
Okay, well, this time machine aspect certainly makes sense for the name Project DeLorean.
Exactly.
Okay, I get it now.
Yes.
So, are you seeing any sort of trends that are happening in the ransomware world?
Well, there are interesting geopolitical trends, definitely. For example, the Conti ransomware, which has expressed publicly support for Russia, and they say that any attack on Russia, we're gonna combat with cyber threats as well. So it's interesting how this development happened. Like threat actors supporting countries, maybe they want to curry favor with the Russian government. Yeah. And there's also some ransomware nowadays. It asks for ransom in terms of goodness, that it encrypts your file, then you can send pictures of you doing charitable works, and then it will decrypt your file. That
is bizarre. Is that a form of like why is that happening? Is that a form of like hacktivism or?
I have no idea about the goodness, but it seems very like Robin Hood kind of thing. But they definitely goes beyond just business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anymore. So now we have the political aspect, and we have sort of like charitable aspect, which, I mean, if you think about it, as an industry becomes older, there are also, I don't know, in a twisted way, some corporate social responsibility maybe that these threat actors are thinking about. I mean, if you think about the Revil ransomware gang, they are on the level of billions in earnings now with the cryptocurrency valuations that we are seeing. So maybe they want to do something else. I don't know. I'm just assuming things here, but
no, I mean, we've known for a minute that, you know, these ransomware criminal gangs are hiring people like lawyers and political advisors. Yes. So, but like, you know, taking their societal responsibilities now is, I don't know.
It's interesting, but it's not new for threat actors as well. Like even in the past, there are threat actors, like they can call themselves hacktivists, that they didn't start to be hacktivists.
Right.
Like they became hacktivists because maybe some people within that organization feel some way about a certain global event. So like in the Conti organization, that's why sort of like the organization became a little bit shaky after the public declaration, because not everyone in that group also agrees with that declaration.
Right. Yeah. So do you think that these trends are likely to continue? Like, what are our predictions about the future?
When it comes to ransomware, as long as we don't get to cooperate beyond our geopolitical boundaries, then threat actors have the tendency to evolve. They have a lot of money. They can improve the capabilities that they have. They can make more automation. They can have wider scope. With the world going towards satellite technology and 5G internet, for instance, it could open up even more room for organizations that are in other countries that are not in the West.
Right.
Who may not have like as strong defenses as possible, like Costa Rica. Someone asked me that why would they hostage Costa Rica, for instance? They may not have the capacity to pay, but with these threat actors, you can negotiate. Right. There is bound to be a value somewhere that would work for them and that the victim can afford to pay. So there could be more of this happening in countries outside of Europe, the US, and the West.
That makes sense. Hey, I want to thank you for being with us today here in Cyber Sauna.
Thank you for having me, Janne.
Thank you. That was our show today. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for tuning in.